The 10th anniversary year in Dokkan has been continuing to go on very strong. Whilst there are the ups and downs as every year has, it has been overall doing pretty well for itself. Now, we are also very close to the second largest celebration of the year, which is going to be the Global Dokkan Celebration. But before we actually get to that, we do need to get past one final Dokkan Fest TUR celebration, and that's where the brand new Mercenary Tao comes into play. Now, this guy is a character that a lot of people, of course, are not excited for, but anyone who is a big fan of Dragon Ball Saga and Dokkan, and now he finally does have a premium character that is arguably very powerful. So today we're going to be talking about what makes this Tao so good, where you could use him, and of course, if you should actually summon for him or not. But without further ado, let's hop into it. Now, with the introduction of Mercenary Tao as a Dokkan Fest, they did actually give this guy a brand new category in his leader skill, which is the Mission Execution category team. Now, there are some decent options here, but overall, it is pretty much a minion kind of category. There's characters like Hit on there too as well. Generally, it's a fine category itself, but he also does lead Earthbred Fighters, which is a very expensive category. Both of those do get Key 3, 200% HP, and 170% to attack and defense. Then an additional 50% to HP attack and defense for characters who will also belong to the Dragon Ball Seekers or Earthlings category team. So again, a lot of these early OG Dragon Ball characters like Kid Goku can actually fit this leader skill. We could see some Earthlings characters, like maybe we get a Tien in the upcoming future. There's a brand new General Blue that just got released, right? There's a few characters who actually do fit this, and of course with Dragon Ball Seekers, like let's say Super Saiyan 4 Daima Goku, Daima could actually bring a lot of extra options to this guy's leader skill, so that is very exciting. In fact, we even see that the Tamagami characters actually were added to Mission Execution, and so was Majin Ku. So we could realistically see these Daima characters be added here, and that's going to be really good for this guy's category team. But as of now, it's not really a great team in terms of the full buff. Overall though, it does have a lot of very viable options that will get you past the most difficult content. Now we could talk about this guy's passive skill, a professional style. This guy does activate his entrance animation when there's another Mission Execution category ally on the team upon his entrance, which is not really too difficult to do if you're running his own team, because the friend Tao will count for your Tao's getting his intro buff and vice versa. So it is going to be his best team regardless. I feel like there is not many situations where you may use this guy on another team, but even then, Mission Execution has some very viable options, so it's not really going to be the worst thing in the world to look for a character that'll fit that. Now, he does randomly change key spheres of a certain type, excluding physical, to rainbow key spheres, and stuns all enemies for one turn. So let's say in a battle hardened formidable foes, or even if you use this guy in extreme super battle road, having that guaranteed stun before you even do anything could be super useful in these stages. On top of that, he gets a permanent 100% attack, 50% chance to perform a critical hit, and 50% damage reduction rate. Now, by itself, 50% damage reduction rate is not the greatest, but there is actually going to be some extra damage reduction in his kit, and we can talk about that in a bit later. But this buff does last for the rest of the fight, all the 100% attack and the 50% chance to crit as well. It is not just a once only one turn thing like the stun and the rainbow orb changing, so keep that in mind. Now we can move on to this character's basic effects. These are the things that he's guaranteed to get no matter what. He gets Key +2 and 200% attack and defense start of turn, 30% damage reduction rate, and 30% chance to perform a critical hit. All of this is really nice in the fact that it will add on to what he gets from his intro animation. So in total, as long as you have his entrance animation up, this character will be having Key 2, 300% attack, 200% defense, 80% damage reduction and 80% chance to perform a critical hit. Now, 80% damage reduction is a very high number. I think a lot of the times we see characters roughly with like 60%, 70% reduction. 80% is not a common number that they're throwing up for these characters. So that is already a pretty huge step compared to the norm of what we see with characters. Now, keep in mind though, you could say maybe as a caveat, this guy actually doesn't have any additional attacks under his basic effects, and many characters nowadays may actually get an additional attack, so you may see it as a little odd, but that's where we can get to the next part of this character's passive skill. He's getting a lot of phase 2 attack, as we call it. When attacking with 12 or more ki, he gets 200% attack. Then for every rainbow key sphere he obtains, he also gets an additional 200% attack when attacking. And again, since this is all when attacking and during the attacking phase, this is considered what we call a phase 2 buff in the passive, which is multiplied on top of the existing attack that he has, which would be 300%. So it's whatever the stats that you'll see into the 300%, and then that is multiplied further by, depending on how many rainbow orbs you get. Let's say you get 3 rainbow key spheres, that's 600% plus the 200% when attacking. That is 800% attack when attacking. So that is likely why this guy doesn't really have any additionals, because he's just going to generally hit some very high attack stats, especially with the more rainbow key spheres you get, along with just having a very high chance to create. 80% is again a little above the norm of what we see for characters, so definitely really nice to see there. Beyond that, this guy actually does have some very useful defensive mechanics. When receiving an attack, he does receive 200% defense. Now this is more of a norm of what we see from the most powerful characters in the game, and this will allow him to get all of his defense even before he actually does attack. And with that 80% damage reduction rate, it will go a very long way. Let's say, for example, you have about 250k defense start of turn. Then you go ahead and essentially multiply that by 3, and this guy will end up going up to 750k defense with the 80% damage reduction. And again, when the math actually ends up working out with the amount of damage you reduce from the bosses, he's going to be a very tanky character. And if he is receiving an unarmed super attack, he does have a great chance, which is a 70% chance to nullify it and counter with tremendous power. Now, there are certain situations where this can become helpful, and there's 2 primary fights that once we get to them, we'll talk about it, but it really helps him out in those 2 situations. One of them is even a type disadvantage boss, so this guy's able to cover himself against one of the harder STR bosses as a physical character. Now, the last part of his passive is going to be more situational. This is actually only against an enemy who is stunned. So again, pretty much just the battle hardened formidable foes fights. You could consider extreme super battle road, but usually those are not on the difficulty level as the brand new fights that we are seeing here. Now, he does get 500% attack start of turn, guaranteed crit, which means that every single attack he does will be a critical hit. Then he gets an additional 500% attack when HP is 70% or less. Now, while this is only against an enemy who was stunned, if you're under 70% HP, this guy can get to some dramatically high numbers. I mean, again, since he only does the 1 super, it does end up being still higher than a lot of the other TORs, I feel like, on those specific turns. It's just a big attack stat, like 120, 130, 150 million. Like, there are situations where Tao will hit some incredible damage numbers and be performing a critical hit. Those first phases of battle hardened formidable foes are literally a joke to this guy, and he will just solo them by himself. That is how powerful this guy is going to be in some of these stages there. But that is pretty much a very niche scenario, especially when we consider in most of the red zone stages there's not an option to stun at all, so they definitely made this guy have his niche when it comes to being able to stun some characters. Now we can talk about his super attack effect. It is the Crane School Assassin Strike. He does massively raise attack for the turn, causes immense damage to enemy, and lowers attack and defense. Now, I think the biggest thing that will be pointed out to a lot of people is that he doesn't have any defense raise on his super attack effect, which does cut a lot of potential defense he could get. But given what this guy's general idea of his passive is, he does get a huge amount of reduction and he wants all of his defense before he attacks regardless. It ends up not really being that big of a deal. Whilst it will always be useful for him to have had like at least a 30% defense raise, it's not going to be a game changer for what this guy's really setting out to do. Now, he does lower attack and defense, which can be useful in some Sparta Hardened Formidable Foe stages, as we talked about, but also some Red Zone stages do have the ability to get attack debuffed, so that could actually come into play when it comes to talking about some of these other stages. Now, finally, the last thing in his kit that we want to talk about is his active skill, the Serious Dodon Ray. This can be activated if there is a Dragon Ball Seekers or Kamehameha category enemy, or when all allies attacking the same turn are mission execution category characters. Now, this is the most restricted thing in his kit, which is really good, in fact, because it means that everything else in his kit is very easy to get. Because this is not even that bad of a restriction, it's just that mission execution is not in the best spot right now, and surprisingly there's not too many Dragon Ball Seekers or Kamehameha category enemies. Now, you know, when Daima stuff rolls around, maybe we get a Dragon Ball Daima Red Zone. There's a lot of potential options. We could see a lot of Dragon Ball Seeker enemies potentially, you know, Super Saiyan 4 Daima Goku, if he gets like a difficult stage, that's a Kamehameha enemy right there. So I think there's a huge amount of potential for the enemies that could activate this. Now, you may be wondering, what exactly is this actual effect? It does cause ultimate damage and guaranteed stuns the enemy for one turn, but he also changes S tier and int key spheres to rainbow key spheres. So again, having the rainbow key spheres is going to be very, very massive for this guy. He really, really wants to collect rainbow key spheres. So whilst there are a bunch of rainbow key sphere changers on his ideal team, having just another option to rainbow orb change in some situations will always be a useful thing. But no, all in all, this Tao Pai Pai is just a very, very good character. I think he's very straightforward with what he wants to do, and as you'll see later in the gameplay, he is able to set out and achieve those things. Now, there is one issue with this character, unfortunately, and that's where we get to his link set. His link set is Crane School, Supreme Warrior, Coward, Incredible Adventure, Dodon Ray, Brutal Beatdown, and Fierce Battle. The link set sucks. It's just straight up bad. If you take a look at his best linking characters, a lot of them are only either outdated or just like don't share anything with him in general, right? Now, there are some characters that could actually work out very well. First and foremost, the brand new General Blue card. He is a supporting character. He will actually share a couple of links with this guy, and you know, there is some things you can do to get him on a rotation together. I think that'll just work very, very well in difficult content even. It's just that beyond that, there's not really anyone that will share 3 or more links with them that is useful right now. We do have the Path to Power Kid Goku. Now, the thing about this character, he's also Rainbow Orb Changer just like the General Blue, but he provides 8% damage reduction, which will make Tao have 88% damage reduction in total. That is a huge amount of reduction, to the point that Tao is just always gonna, like, when Path to Power Kid Goku gives that 8% reduction plus his support, Tao is unable to die. It's just not possible for Tao to lose. So that's obviously a really, really good thing. Then we also have the AGL Kid Goku that came out for Saiyan Day. I mean, they will share Incredible Adventure Fierce Battle. It's not the best thing in the world, but I think that Incredible Adventure link, being his only defensive link, will help Tao out in the long run, because even just a small shift in defense, again, will go a long way with that 80% damage reduction. So even just 7% extra defense from that link will be very, very useful for Tao. Now, one final character I actually am bringing up here is AGL Super Gogeta. It's not because of their links or anything, but AGL Super Gogeta providing that 54% support active is just going to be gigantic for Tao. It's going to make his numbers skyrocket. And on top of that, he does also provide Rainbow Orb changing on his active skills, so that could be another avenue for Tao to potentially collect 4 or even 5 Rainbow Key Spheres, which would be really, really good for this guy. Now, when it comes to teams, this guy is very, very barren. He is on 8 teams in total, but only 2 teams have actual leaders that I think will work for him. One would be his own team, right? Mission Execution or Earthbred Fighters. Now, we could talk about Mission Execution a little more here. Again, the team has some pretty decent options overall, but I'm not going to say it's a crazy team. You have General Blue, Hit, Gloria, right? Some of the bigger TWAR hitter options on this. Really, really nice there. But beyond that, I mean, Intifapu would pretty much be your next best option. Then I feel like it just falls off a cliff. Maybe we could see Physical Raditz get an easy A. AGL PyCon, you could just throw him on here, but he's not really going to be doing a lot for this specific team build. So that's really it there. Now, Gamma 1 and Gamma 2 are actually on this category, so eventually when they get an easy A, maybe they could actually work decently well in here. The Limit Breaker Super Saiyan 4s are on here again. Ku and Do should be on this category. We see that Do in the data is actually on Mission Execution. He's just not an actual card in game, so we'll just have to wait and see for him to actually get in there. But yeah, for now the category is not the greatest, so it's really relying on the Earthbred Fighter section. But like I talked about earlier, we have like AGO Gogeta, we have Tech Vegito on there, we have AGO Kid Goku, Path to Power Kid Goku. There's a bunch of these characters that actually would fit, and a lot of those characters would actually also fit either DB Seekers or Earthlings. So when it comes to this guy's best team, you're hovering around 800k HP or so, which is pretty good, I think, for a TUR team. And this guy is able to just, you know, hold his own as a slot 1 tank there. So I'm actually very impressed by how effective this guy's team is right now. Considering I feel like usually when a like new TUR team or setup drops, it's very barren and very like, oh, we need this type of character, we need this type of character. I feel like he's already set up to be very good, so it's a pretty successful category job for the most part. Now, the other team we can talk about is the AGO Kid Goku DB Saga team. It is pretty expensive in its own right, of course, with also having Earthbred Fighters as a category leader, but there's no mission execution characters at all, basically. I mean, you pretty much need General Blue on the team, and if you don't have him, then you're kind of stuck with not too many characters. I mean, maybe if we get a future Xeno Trunks, that could be really powerful. Limit Breaker Super Saiyan 4 Goku EZA, he probably wouldn't even fit the team regardless. You're just very much struggling for some other options, so ideally, it's pretty much you need General Blue or else you don't have a character that will let Tao get his intro. And as we talked about it, the intro provides 50% damage reduction. So this guy is basically gonna not be doing any of his niche at all. The whole point of his kit is that he's a slot 1 kind of tank character. So if you take that away from him, he doesn't really have too much besides a nice little big attack stat. But even then, he will only have 30% chance to crit and will lose some attacks. So it's just not really even worth considering running him on that team unless you have General Blue with him. Which is, again, not... If you're summoning for Tao, it's going to be very likely you get the General Blue banner unit because he will be featured there. It's going to be a 7 featured character banner, but I just wanted to go ahead and bring this team up as an option because it is DB Saga, and it's not impossible to consider that you'll have the banner unit General Blue with him. Now from here, we're going to talk about this character in the hardest stages in the game. As usual, we're going to be starting things off with the Red Zone stages. So the Goku Story Universe Survival Saga stage. And I feel like this guy does his job here very well. In the early stages, you're not even worried about needing a slot 1 tank. At most, Tech Kefla will hit you for like 3 mil range, which there's many characters who are able to handle that. It's getting closer to the 5 mil, 4 mil range that could really devastate a lot of characters. but that allows you to get time to build up with some of the characters that you're running. For example, on this team, you see I have Ageo Kid Goku, you see I have Ageo Gogeta, just a bunch of these floating characters that can actually sit in slot 1 if they would get locked in slot 1 by the Int Jiren phase, and just allowing myself to build up. Luckily, these characters don't even need too much build up themselves, to where Tao can just kind of shoot through these phases and get them done pretty quickly. Of course, we see just a bunch of different varying attack stats here. And that's the thing that I find really fun about this character, is that not only are there just a ton of Rainbow Orb Changers available for him, he also does make his own on the first turn, and as long as you set up the orbs properly, I think it's pretty consistent to get this guy 3-4 Rainbow Key Spheres every single turn. I mean, there's been a couple of turns where I've gotten 5 Rainbow Key Spheres, and you would think that that's not really too common, but then again, you throw in General Blue, you throw in Ageo Gogeta active skill, you throw in Path to Power Kid Goku. There's certain turns that line up where you have Glorio plus General Blue plus Tao, and then you're able to use the Mission Execution active skill and get 2 Rainbow Orb changing colors out there. It's just really easy to use this guy, I found. And of course, in this Universe Survival Saga stage, he does really well against the Int Jiren specifically. He is not only type advantage, but he's not gonna take any damage himself from the Jiren. And if he's in slot 2, let's say, I don't know, Path to Power Kid Goku or the Ageo Kid Goku, whoever gets locked in slot 1, you have the attack lowering so that the next turn Jiren's not going to do as much damage to whoever's sitting there in slot 1. Again, you have Glorio, who, as long as he's gone some super attacks by that point, he could use his active skill and straight up cancel the Int Jiren super, to where you're not even worried about that. Then as we get to the Ageo Jiren phase, that's where things are a little more dangerous, because characters like Path to Power Kid Goku or Glorio may get caught depending on how many, stacks Glorio has, or, Path to Power Kid Goku in general just not going to be good against that defensive reduction. But if you're able to get Ageo Gogeta's active skill out, you have the Scouter ability for 4 turns, and you're looking pretty good. And of course, General Tao himself is perfectly safe if you get the good RNG with the Rainbow Key Spheres, which is not really difficult to do. This guy is able to do quite a bit of damage on his own to the Jiren fights, considering it is just one single attack stat that just crits most of the time. I find it just very nice and just very quick to go ahead and get through these fights because of that. And he's able to just eat Jiren's super attack, I would say 9 out of 10 times. There's not going to be every single situation where he'll live, especially if it's a thing of, oh, maybe you miss Path to Power Kid Goku's damage reduction by an orb or 2, or maybe, just a bunch of different things that can potentially happen if you're not able to get Incredible Adventure up for any reason, things like that. But at least in my run, actually the 2 runs of this specifically, I'm showing the second one. In my second run here, when he got supered, he was just fine, so it's not really a big deal. I think this guy does really good in that Ageo Jiren Fate. This could be potentially been one of the harder ones for him, just because he doesn't have any defense that he gets on a super attack effect, but no, he does just fine. Now we could talk about the Vegeta story stage for Universe Survival Saga, and this one could arguably be one of the more dangerous runs for Tao, just because at the end the Jiren is type disadvantage, but we'll talk about that when we get there. We have the Topo phase right here, which Tao is actually doing a unarmed super, so that will power up Topo and getting more damage. But the good thing about it is that this guy, again, will just do one big attack stat. So since he's not doing like 3 additionals, well, technically you could see that as a loss of damage in terms of, like let's say if he did 3 additionals for 25 mil compared to one big 70 mil super attack, right? I think the math adds up for the 70 mil in general, but you guys get the point. It's a thing where he's not going to power up this character as much by doing all 4 of those attacks and just doing one single super attack. So that's really good. Of course, this guy's able to eat the super attack from Topo very well. I believe it was either 40k or 80k, which perfectly fine with me, right? That's a definitely good amount of damage to take from this guy, especially when he's built up a little. Not really too much of an issue against the Topo phase specifically. Now we get to the Jiren phase, and it does get scary because Jiren hits for 5.7 million. But Jiren is not only type disadvantage or type advantage against the Tao, but he also has class advantage because he's super SDR attacking an extreme physical character. That is literally worst case scenario for Mercenary Tao. But the thing about this Jiren is that his super attack is an unarmed super as well. And as we talked about earlier in this character's kit, they do have a 70% chance to nullify and counter any unarmed supers. So I actually never got hit by Jiren's super by this guy because every single time he just countered Jiren's super, took 0 damage, and just dished out a bunch of damage back. I mean, you could see one of these turns with AGO Gogeta's active. I did so much damage on that turn. It was absolutely insane. If I'm not mistaken, I got a super huge attack stat, and then after that I got the counter off, and then I just massively dealt damage to the SDR Jiren in that phase. Of course, a big huge thanks to AGO Gogeta for the active, but that's just a character you're going to be running on this team, and he massively benefits Tao. And in many of the situations, Tao PHY was just able to live the super, right? You know, with Path Park and Goku's on rotation, with the AGO Gogeta active up. I think the only time he definitely would have died would have been turns where it's just him, like let's say General Blue or Glorio. Then I just don't think he has enough of the defensive stat to actually straight up tank the super. But I'm pretty sure that's why they gave him the unarmed super attack counter, because they're like, hey, there's Jiren fights there, let's kind of give him a way to kind of get around that. And I think that was a really good decision if that's what they were going for. So this guy's actually really great in that stage. He does very, very well even for being type disadvantage. Now, I also do like to bring up the Super Saiyan Blue Goku fight, just because it is a dodge canceling fight. Pretty early on, this guy can get up to like a 4 million super attack stat and do multiple of them. It could be very devastating for a lot of different characters, especially since he limits dodge. And again, this guy actually does an unarmed super. So what happens is you put Tao in slot 1, and he's gonna just basically guaranteed counter either 1 or 2 of the super attacks, and Goku doesn't do enough damage to even hurt this guy in a massive way. So no, he just absolutely demolishes this fight. This Blue Goku is also a Kamehameha category character, so you're able to use Tao PHY's active skill whenever you want. And to be honest, I just want to show this clip here where I have the AGO Gogeta active up. I believe it's like a 130 mil attack stat into a 150 mil attack stat into a counter, and then both the second super attack, I believe, and the counter hit the damage count of 999999999. Just so silly. This guy demolishes this fight. It's very, very hilarious, especially because, like, you know, I mean, a character like Unhype could struggle in this fight. Some of the better TUR characters like STR Cell, like on his own team, you're not clearing this fight with STR Cell, man. Under his own team specifically. If you're running him on another team, he'll be fine once he revives. But like, this guy he doesn't run into the issue. Like, he actually hard counters this fight. This is his best fight in the game right now, and it is a pretty difficult fight. So that's really good to see. Now, I talked about this earlier, but battle hardened formidable foes, I only went in stage 10 because I feel like the rest of them will follow the same pattern more or less anyways. But it's very rinse and repeat for him in this stage. He stuns the first phase guaranteed every single time under his own team. He one-shots the first phase. He goes into the second phase, and he's not going to die most of the time. I think there's one time where Gamma 1 actually killed him. That is because Gamma 1 is actually built up quite a bit, and he hit me for 700k. So technically I had enough HP to live, I just wasn't at max HP. But most situations, Gamma 1 will instantly super this guy, and he will take about 300k is what I've seen, which from a type disadvantage, class disadvantage super, I'm 100% more than good with that. That is really, really good tanking. Then against the Cell Max AoE, it can be very troublesome if this guy is able to get fully built up. Now, unfortunately, I actually didn't really get a clip of Cell Max too much in here, so we can't really have like a definitive showing of what Tao does against the Cell Max phase. But on the very first turn, Tao will be fine against the Cell Max super attack. It's not going to be an issue. I think the issue will be, you know, a character like Path Parked Goku, or Glorio doesn't dodge, or, you know, if you're running Eiji Gogeta, you know, there could be issues in many situations with the AoE super. So this guy doesn't have, like, of course, a team protector ability, but he himself will be perfectly fine against the AoE. Because again, he's a character that just gets all of his defense instantly. So even if he's in slot 2, he's going to do just fine there. He doesn't have to super attack first at all. And that's really good. Now, of course, this guy is demolishing red zone, demolishing battle hardened foes. But he is more or less a non-factor in festival battles. Do I think you could win, like, or get very, very far with like a Tao team? Let's say if you have, you know, the year 10 fusions on there, you could throw hit on the team. Like, there's a setup for sure, like with stacking characters. You could even have the AGL Kid Goku on there and just stack up and get very far in the fight. Yes, because, you know, let's say Tao is at, I don't know, 700, 800k defense range or so, and he'll be able to eat a lot of the actual normal attacks actually for a non-stacker. By the end of the fight though, when you're seeing like 7 mil normals and then Eiji Gogeta could do a 10 mil normal, this guy will unfortunately crumble. You know, it's really funny, if he had like 50% defense on a super attack effect, he probably would be able to live the normals. But again, that's where he's not designed for this fight, so I'm not gonna counter against him too much. And there's not really too many characters that actually do work in festival battles. So obviously, as a non-stacking character, I kind of don't care too much about his performance in here, but just wanted to bring it up in case people were like, oh, you know, could you maybe use this guy in festival? Fortunately not. I mean, it's funny though, because they could eventually just start making characters that aren't even stackers that are good for festivals, just looking at how good Tao is himself. So that is really, really nice. Now, we could talk about hidden potential here and like dupes and things like that. Realistically, dupes actually, I think, kind of do matter for this guy, but not because of the hidden potential system, but because of the stats. I said this earlier, but the raw stats alone, any like even small minimal changes can help this guy out a very long way. Because I feel like he's not a character that is necessarily dupe reliant. He's going to perform so much better with a dupe or two in him. Just getting that extra huge defensive stat buff will be really, really good. Because let's say, for example, like if a 55% Tao, let's say he's at 170k defense, right? And then you obviously multiply that by the 200%, which is just multiplying that by 3. This guy goes to 510k compared to if he was like rainbowed with like 220k defense or something like that. He would actually shoot up to about 660k, and that will make a huge difference because let's say you reduce a 4 mil super by 80%, you will go down to 800k. So obviously the difference between taking 510k off of that compared to 660k will be pretty massive. So you want as much defense as possible just to keep as much health as possible and let the next Tao straight up tank. That kind of example works. And in that regards, we could talk about equipment. I think that when it comes to equipment, you just want to go bronze defense, really. I think bronze defense is definitely the best for him. For the silver, you definitely want to go additional, I think, with that. And for gold, probably defense as well. Maybe an additional could work too, but either defense or additional. I'm gonna probably like build my Tao in the future whenever I get dupes in him with the full defensive build, and then actually getting some additionals in there as well. Now, when it comes to the actual hidden potential system stats, keep in mind that Tao does have an 80% chance to crit. He has no additionals in his passive, and he has no dodge in his passive, so he doesn't have any of those things. I feel like dodge definitely won't hurt, because if you just avoid the super attack in general, that's really cool. But realistically, this guy is going to straight up tank every super in the game, and the ones that he can't tank, he actually is able to counter in the case of the S tier Adjourned fight. So when we consider all of that, I think additionals is definitely the best way to go when it comes to actually selecting the hidden potential options. Now, to wrap things up, should you summon on this Tao banner? No. I think Tao is a really good character, but you really want to make sure you would get his banner unit. Ideally, you have the 10th anniversary Gogeta. Ideally, you have maybe Glorio, you know, and just a bunch of these more recent premium characters that while that team is really good, I don't think it's plausible to have all of those options. On top of that, Global Dokkan Celebration is at the end of next month. We're thinking the banner is actually going to drop either on the 30th of next month or it's going to drop on July 7th. We'll have to wait and see how things turn out with that, but it's going to be really huge whether it's Namek Saga or Daima. We'll be finding out in the next few weeks, so I think you should just skip this banner altogether and wait for him to return on a future banner. Now, if you're a really huge Tao fan, right, that's really cool too, and I think that go ahead and summon if you really want to. Just keep in mind of what the stones you have will be left over. And beyond that, we also do have the free tickets, 28 tickets in total. So maybe you get Tao off those tickets themselves. If you haven't already, make sure you farm them in game. Now for overall pros and cons for this character, I think first and foremost, him being a slot 1 tank is very good. I think especially introducing a new category, him being able to hold that first very dangerous slot down so that you have an easier time with a lot of the other characters that may be introduced is just a great idea. And in my opinion, leader should always be a slot 1 option for a character, at least maybe only on their own team. But again, especially in this Tao case, it really does help out. I think he's very easy to use. He's a straightforward character, barely has any restrictions, and the best teammates for him do provide him extra rainbow orb changing. So on his own setup, he's just super smooth and simple to actually get things done. On top of that, I feel like he's more consistent than you would think because of the fact that his setups have so many orb changes around him. He has the orb changing in his kit, at least from the beginning of battles, and I think he's more ideally made for shorter fights in the case where he's able to just stun and battle hardened foes, guaranteed every single time. I feel like his damage can vary time to time for sure, but overall, it is a pretty consistent thing to get him that large amount of rainbow key spheres on his own setups. Now, some negatives for him, I would say definitely his link set is not the greatest. In fact, it is probably one of the worst link sets in the game if we're going to go that far. It's just really bad, so that does hurt this guy, because imagine if he had a link set like Cold Judgment or some like huge defensive link even, that would help this guy out so much. And beyond that, I think the lack of teams and setups for him, that is also hurt by his link set, but just by being a Tao Pai Pai character, he's not really going to be on a lot of different teams. He's not going to work well with a lot of different characters. And unfortunately, he is stuck just to being on his own team for the most part, which is a little bit of a bummer. But I mean, again, usually now these characters are built to being worked on a certain team or a certain event, so it's not the biggest deal in the world. It is just nice if maybe he had some other setups. Who knows though, maybe Daima will help out in that regards. We'll just have to wait and see. But again, let me know what you guys think about the Tao Pai Pai. I think he's a fantastic character. I think he's definitely in the range of like Tak Kefla, Inte, and the Ijo Kid Goku. He's definitely up there with those for me. I'm gonna make a tier list for this guy and, you know, just kind of maybe wrap up some thoughts on the Golden Week characters. I don't think I've made a EZA tier list for the Tech Hefla, so we'll actually include her in that as well. But that'll be later on in a few days when I really get things completely set in my mind for, you know, the exact ranking of Tao. But I'm thinking he's gonna be like 4. Right under the 3 characters that I listed previously and above the cells even. But I appreciate y'all for watching, and of course I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.